So the idea with reaction is that I take an intervention, which is essentially a multi-nutrient intervention that's comprised of three primary ingredients, which are choline, uridine monophosphate, and the omega-3 fatty acids. And why these? These are the essential precursors to phosphatidylcholine, which is essentially the major backbone that makes up synaptic membranes, the connection between neurons, right? And the idea has always been, in terms of the science that sort of builds up this kind of research and this kind of hypotheses, that if you support the buildup of synaptic membranes, if you build up support of synapses, that perhaps you can also support memory and sort of the prevent cognitive decline. There's been some research that does look into using this type of multi-nutrient intervention in early stage Alzheimer's disease in Europe that showed some potential promising results when this was done for 2 and 3 years in the earliest stages of Alzheimer's disease when compared with versus placebo. So what my study aims to do is to try to do this in normal aging adults. So taking it one step further, trying to look at individuals in the earliest stages, because of course, even as you age, some subset of these people will probably go on to develop Alzheimer's disease later in their life. It's not possible to know that right now, if you just take a cross section of the population, right, based on current technology, based on current screening modalities. But wouldn't it be fantastic if we can see whether or not there's an intervention out there that, might have some kind of unique effect on their cognitive function in some favorable way. So that's essentially what this is, a pilot study looking at the feasibility of such a multi-nutrient intervention, first on its implementation, and exploring whether or not we may get some signal on some neuropsychological, in other words, cognitive outcomes, and then using that information to, in the future, hopefully design a statistically sound efficacy trial. For the most part, as I mentioned, this is a pilot design. So for now, we're looking at things like our ability to enroll individuals. One of the things that makes this particularly unique, and one of the things that we wanted to do to assess feasibility, was in the context of the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. It's very much worthwhile to note, and this is not necessarily unique to the study, but something that we all had to do as scientists. We had to adapt the study in the middle of the pandemic. This was not originally designed to be a virtual study from the very outset. This was a study that was proposed to the American Academy of Neurology, funded by the American Academy of Neurology, the McKnight Brain Foundation, originally as an in-person study, but was quickly adapted and quickly approved to become an all virtual design. So in fact, this study, the feasibility quickly turned into the feasibility of doing an all virtual study where all assessments and all follow-up assessments were done entirely via virtual platforms, very much like the way we are currently doing this interview. Neuropsychological assessments, the cognitive tests, the screening were all done by this platform. The only in-person interaction was actually the trade-off and the handing off, rather, of the interventional product. So that was the actual handout, and of course it was done in a contact-free, sort of safe manner. But so that is worthwhile noting. But so one of the things that we did at this conference in particular was focus on precisely some of those early feasibility numbers. So sort of talk about how in just because again we gave ourselves about a year to do some of the recruitments, and we had some recruitment goals. We talked about how even before that 1 year period, we'd had quite a bit of success in some of the recruitment numbers. So for example, we are in the Miami area, which is in South Florida, which is a uniquely rich area for the diversity of population that we have down here. So we had quite an excited population in terms of individuals who wanted to participate. So we were able to get 51% Hispanic enrollment, which is extraordinarily high and extraordinarily exciting for a study, particularly one that deals with aging. So that's pretty interesting. And that was something we were able to talk about in our preliminary thing. So those are the kind of variables we were reporting on, and some more in detail regarding feasibility. As far as the other things that we're going to be talking about eventually, of course, we're looking into different kinds of memory domains, verbal memory, executive functioning, processing speed, so forth. We collaborated with a neuropsychologist to make sure we had a comprehensive profile, just as all the standard domains that are usually assessed in neuropsychological assessments. Again, just to see whether or not any one of these does produce a signal, so that whenever we do look for an efficacy trial, we can make sure that that would be an appropriately powered statistical primary outcome. This is, again, the pilot study, so at this time, we're not powered to detect signals. It's very exciting to be able to work with something like this, because a lot of patients have described in the last couple of years, especially in the clinical experience, a lot of concerns and fears regarding interventions, whether it be, especially in the context of Alzheimer's drugs, which I emphasize, even though my work in this case is not for Alzheimer's interventions. Nevertheless, people hear things, right? And there's been a lot of concerns recently that a lot of Alzheimer's interventions have side effects, a lot of scary side effects, and that those fears, propagate, and a lot of patients are concerned. And right now, the idea that there could be an intervention that could be taken early on that's nutrient based, and by the very nature of it being a nutrient based drink and not a drug, and therefore not having the adverse effects that are associated with drugs or those kinds of therapies, is highly attractive to patients and something that they are very excited about. And in a world where the environment is such that there are many things marketed to them that are of questionable efficacy, questionable science, where there aren't scientists going out of the way to try to do what we're doing here, which is to see whether or not there may be genuine scientific efficacy. It is important for us to do these kinds of studies to see whether or not there may be benefit. So I think we should take these opportunities to really investigate these kinds of interventions more so, and sort of not dismiss something outright simply because it is not a $1 billion drug.